Welcome to Hollywood Graveyard, where we set out to remember and celebrate the lives of those who lived to entertain us by visiting their final resting places. Today we're exploring Calvary Cemetery, where we'll find the Barrymores, Lou Costello, Mabel Normand, and many more. Join us, won't you? Calvary is a Catholic cemetery located in East LA and run by the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. It was founded in 1896 and is the oldest Catholic cemetery in the area. The original Calvary Cemetery was founded in the mid-1800s closer to downtown, near what is now Dodger Stadium. The who's who of early LA were buried there, including the Pico family. When development in the area began to encroach on the cemetery, it was decided that it would be shut down and eventually moved here to East LA in the 1890s. The old cemetery was abandoned, fell into disrepair, and fell prey to vandals and grave robbers who sought after rumors of Spanish treasure entombed with the dead. One jewel thief even ripped the remains of Maria Pico, once First Lady of Mexican California, right from her tomb, and left her skeleton on the lawn nearby, only to be discovered by a boy walking home from school. Most of the bodies were eventually removed to the new Calvary Cemetery or elsewhere, but due to poor record keeping, it was impossible to know how many bodies were left behind, and discoveries of graves and remains would continue to be made in the area for decades. On the site of the old Calvary Cemetery now stands Cathedral High School, whose mascot is, fittingly, the Phantoms. Calvary is a monument hunter's dream. Unlike the small flat markers ubiquitous at memorial parks, Calvary features a veritable forest of large, intricately carved upright stone markers and statues. Jesus, angels, the saints, and Mother Mary all tending to the dead. The centerpiece of Calvary Cemetery is the main mausoleum, which we will be visiting today. It was built in 1936 by architect Ross Montgomery, the entrance guarded by a century of angels. The mausoleum's design was inspired by Italian Romanesque cathedrals, with pink and white marble walls, hand-painted ceiling frescoes, and beautiful stained glass windows. At the heart of the mausoleum is a chapel where daily masses are held, its design echoing Spanish missions from centuries past. Crypt entombment is an ancient practice among Catholics, dating back to the early catacombs and to Christ himself, who was laid to rest in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea after the crucifixion. Calvary is a large cemetery, so we're going to break this tour up into two parts. Let's make our way up to the main mausoleum for this first part. Heading into the entrance, we pass straight through and up to the second level. Passing the chapel, we head to the alcove immediately to the right. On the left wall is the crypt of Lionel Barrymore, part of the Barrymore dynasty of actors in early Hollywood. Lionel was elder brother to Ethel and John Barrymore. He began his career on stage, reluctantly following his parents into theater. In the early 1900s, he began performing in film and soon radio. Lionel became a Christmas tradition to millions of Americans beginning in the 1930s, playing Ebenezer Scrooge on annual radio broadcasts of A Christmas Carol for 2 decades. This role led to perhaps his best-known role as the cantankerous Mr. Potter on It's a Wonderful Life.
Hey! Merry Christmas, Mr. Potter! Happy New Year to you! In jail! Go on home, they're waiting for you.
In addition, he won an Academy Award for his performance in A Free Soul. Entombed next to Lionel is his wife Irene, an actress who died on Christmas Eve, 1936. So distraught was Lionel that he was unable to play Scrooge that year in A Christmas Carol. Before her marriage to Lionel, Irene actually dated his younger brother, John, whose erstwhile crypt is here below. John Barrymore is considered one of the greatest actors of his generation. He was known as the Great Profile for his distinctive and commanding features. He too began his career on stage, and his performances in Shakespearean roles like Richard III and Hamlet in the early 20s led him to be named the greatest living American tragedian. A film career followed. One of his early roles was in one of Hollywood's very first horror films, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in 1920. His transformation from Dr. Jekyll to Mr. Hyde was striking, the earliest stages of the transformation being effected not with prosthetics, but simply by contorting his face unnaturally. His stage-trained voice was an asset that helped him transition into the talkies, with films like Grand Hotel, 20th Century, and Midnight. Barrymore died in 1942 at the age of 60. He was friends with actor Errol Flynn, who claimed in his memoir that a director friend had borrowed the body of Barrymore from the funeral home and propped it up in Flynn's house as a prank, scaring him half to death when he arrived home. Whether or not this is true is up for some debate. John wished to be cremated after his death, his ashes buried next to his parents in Philadelphia. As cremation was strictly prohibited by the Catholic Church, Lionel had John's remains entombed here after his death. In 1980, John's son decided to have his father's remains cremated and moved, according to his wishes, and so this crypt is now empty. John Barrymore is the grandfather of actress Drew Barrymore. Heading around to the next alcove down, high on the left wall is the crypt of Lou Costello. He was a comedian known for his partnership with Bud Abbott as comedy act Abbott and Costello. They started in burlesque before moving on to radio and films. They are the originators of what is perhaps the most famous comedy routine in history, Who's on First?
Who's on first, what's on second, I don't know, is on third.
You know the guy's names on the baseball team?
Yes.
Well, go ahead. Who's on first?
Yes.
I mean the guy's name.
Who?
The guy playing first.
Who?
The guy playing first base.
Who?
The guy on first base.
Who is on first?
What are you asking me for? I don't know.
Now, wait a minute,
I'm asking you who's on first.
That's his name.
Well, go ahead and tell me.
Who?
The guy on first.
That's it. That's his name.
Well, you ain't said nothing. I ain't asked you nothing.
You did.
You know the guy's name on first base?
Sure.
Well, tell me the guy's name on first base.
Who?
The guy playing first base.
Who is on first, Lou?
What are you asking me for?
They starred in dozens of films together, like Hold That Ghost and Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Passing behind the altar, we turn right and head to the end of this hallway, then turn left into the last corridor. On the right is the crypt of actress Mary Philbin. If you saw our Halloween special, you'll remember Mary as the leading lady of several early horror and monster movies. She played Christine in 1925's The Phantom of the Opera. Her unmasking of the Phantom is one of early Hollywood's most iconic scenes. In another Beauty and the Beast tale, The Man Who Laughs, Mary plays a blind woman who falls in love with a man named Gwynplaine, whose face has been permanently disfigured into a wide grin. Gwynplaine was the inspiration for the Joker. Mary retired from acting in the 30s and made few public appearances, with the exception of an appearance at the Los Angeles opening of the musical The Phantom of the Opera. Just around the corner, back in the main corridor on the right, is Jimmy McHugh. He was one of the most prolific songwriters of the 20s to the 50s, whose hits were performed by artists like Chet Baker, Bing Crosby, Ella Fitzgerald, Judy Garland, and more. He wrote songs for Broadway shows like Blackbirds of 1928 and International Review, which included the hit On the Sunny Side of the Street. Another of his popular songs is I'm in the Mood for Love.
I'm in the mood for love, simply because you're near me. Funny, but when you're near me, I'm in the mood for love.
In the next corridor down, on the right wall, is the crypt of Vivian Edwards. Her career in silent-era comedies may have only lasted a few years, but she was one of the popular supporting actresses in the Keystone films, starring alongside Charlie Chaplin in many of his early roles. Above Vivian is the unmarked crypt of her husband, Bryan Foy. He was a filmmaker in the first half of the 20th century who headed up Warner Brothers' B Picture unit. There he became known as the Keeper of the Bees. He directed Helene Costello in the 1928 film Lights of New York, considered the first all-talking, full-length feature film. The jazz singer was only part-talking. In the years that followed, he gained renown for producing offbeat and unconventional B films, like I Was a Communist for the FBI, and House of Wax, starring Vincent Price.
You shouldn't have done that, my dear.
It is Kathy. It's Kathy's body under the wax. I knew it. I knew it all the time.
Continuing down the main corridor, in Block 23, is the crypt of cinematographer Saul Polito. He was the man behind the camera for films like The Adventures of Robin Hood, Arsenic and Old Lace, and Sergeant York. He was nominated for 3 Oscars in his career. And hey, he was from Sicily, just like our Giuseppe, so that makes him extra special. Still further down, low on the wall, is the crypt of another member of the Barrymore family, Ethel Barrymore. She was a preeminent stage actress dubbed the First Lady of the American Theater. Like her brothers, she shone early in her career on stage in productions like Captain Jinx of the Horse Marines, Romeo and Juliet, and The Constant Wife. On film, she can be seen in The Spiral Staircase, Pinky, and None But the Lonely Heart, which earned her an Oscar. Heading into the next corridor on the right, we find Pola Negri on the left. She was a Polish actress popular in the silent era, who often played femme fatales or tragic figures. She rose to popularity in Europe, catching the eye of Hollywood in films like Madame du Barry. She then became one of the first European actresses invited to Hollywood, and quickly forged her place as one of the most popular actresses of the era. Other films include Forbidden Paradise and A Woman Commands. She was romantically involved with 2 silent legends, Charlie Chaplin and Rudolph Valentino. Back to the main corridor, most of the way down, on the left, we find Eddie Gribbon. He was an actor who, early in his career, can be seen in dozens of silent comedies from Keystone and Christie Film Companies, alongside stars like Ben Turpin, Marie Prevost, and Mabel Normand. He was never a leading man, but worked steadily for decades to follow, even playing a stormtrooper in Charlie Chaplin's magnum opus, The Great Dictator, in 1940. Let's make our way back to the chapel. A few alcoves down on the right, we find the crypt of Irene Dunne. She's been described as the best actress to never win an Academy Award, being nominated 5 times for films including The Awful Truth, Love Affair, and I Remember Mama. Later in her career, she dedicated herself primarily to civic and philanthropic causes, raising money for hospitals, and even became a delegate to the United Nations under President Eisenhower. Continuing down this corridor, we reach the southwest wing of the Mausoleum. Turning right, low on the left, we find the queen of silent comedy, Mabel Normand. She was the leading lady of Mack Sennett's Keystone Studio, the greatest comedy studio of the era, which teamed her up with legends like Charlie Chaplin, Fatty Arbuckle, and Ben Turpin. By the early 19-teens, she was even writing and directing her own films, making her one of the first women in Hollywood to do so. In 1914, she starred in Mabel's Strange Predicament, notable for being the debut of Charlie Chaplin's tramp character. That same year, she starred in Tilly's Punctured Romance with Chaplin and Marie Dressler, Keystone's first feature-length comedy. Many of her films included The Keystone Cops. One of the most iconic scenes featured Mabel tied to a railroad track with a train barreling down on her. Other notable films include Mickey and The Extra Girl. A series of scandals in the early 20s took a hard toll on Mabel's career. In 1921, her friend and frequent co-star Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle was accused in the death of Virginia Rappe. Though eventually acquitted, Arbuckle became persona non grata, and his films, many of which featured Mabel, were banned. The following year, Mabel's close friend William Desmond Taylor was murdered. While ruled out as a suspect, Mabel was questioned for hours, being the last person to see him alive. One theory was that drug dealers killed Taylor for his efforts to rid Mabel of her cocaine dependency. However, Mabel's family and estate refute this theory, stating she never was a drug addict. Mabel retired from the screen in the late 20s as her health began to deteriorate, and died of tuberculosis at just 37. Next to Mabel is actor John Hodiak. His career began on stage and radio before landing in Hollywood in the 40s. Health problems kept Hodiak from military service during World War II, and soon he became a leading man that filled the gaps left behind by men like Clark Gable and Jimmy Stewart, who were off serving their country. His films include Alfred Hitchcock's Lifeboat and Somewhere in the Night. He died of a heart attack at just 41 while making the film On the Threshold of Space. Finally, we make our way all the way down to the basement of the mausoleum. Actress Peggy O'Neil, born Barbara O'Neil, was a promising young starlet whose light was snuffed out before she was ever able to truly shine. She began landing small roles in films in the 40s, including Song of the Open Road, alongside stars like Jane Powell, Edgar Bergen, and W.C. Fields. After a particularly vicious quarrel with her boyfriend, Peggy decided to take her own life, an empty bottle of Seconal found in her hand, the same sleeping drug that would later claim the lives of stars like Judy Garland and Carol Landis. On the day she was found dead, she was set to sign a contract with Paramount. She was just 21. And that concludes our tour. What are some of your favorite memories of the stars we visited today? Share them in the comments below, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more famous grave tours. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. To all you lovely viewers out there around the world, Merry Christmas from Hollywood Graveyard. I know you've all been good this year, so I hope Santa brings you everything on your wish list. As for me, all I want is a Reese's peanut butter cup the size of a car tire. And maybe a new hat.